Um, well, let me just say that there's huge plans to continue this effort after the election cycle, and what directions we take will not be clear. We will be sponsoring public policy forums, but obviously the need for better science education is clear, and we were not going to be the only people pushing for this. It's been going on for a long time. I think that let me say it quite clearly, too, that we don't need to have special classes in critical thinking. In my opinion, that's what education should be about in all levels. And it's not just in science. I don't care, and I've never cared, if students learn detailed facts. I assume when I teach students coming into university that they know virtually nothing. It's usually a good assumption. But one thing that I hope that the only thing that I hope that they learn in their high school education or public education, and if they go to university, even in university the facts don't matter too much. I want students to learn how to think, because that's what's going to impact on their future. Most of the stuff they're going to learn, and I found this myself, most of the stuff I know about physics I learned after I received my PhD. But hopefully the techniques of problem solving and thinking that I learned are the things that allow me to learn after that. And so I strongly, detailed curricula don't matter to me so much as teaching students how to think, how to question, how to think, how to be skeptical, and how to filter knowledge. The learning skills are what we really want to teach students, not the material, but the skills so that they can be lifelong learners. And that should be the goal of education, in my opinion, at every level.
Thank you, Charles Purvo. Actually, one of the questions I was going to ask was already asked there. In my life, though, there have been three events that caused major shift in American thinking. December 7th, 1941, October 4th, 1957, which was Sputnik. I had a big impact on my life, and September 11th, 2001. I almost despair today that we can do anything to cause a major shift in this country without some kind of, asteroid showing up or something. And what do you think would cause the shift? Thank you.
I've thought about this a lot. In fact, the very first paper I ever wrote when I was a graduate student, in a policy paper, it wasn't a physics paper, in fact, was trying to look at what the next Sputnik would be. This was in the issue of nuclear war. I was very interested then, as I am now, and it's, again, an issue that never discussed. The fact that we have 10,000 warheads in this country, over 2,000 on hair-trigger alert against an enemy that doesn't exist. At the time, that was an issue, and we tried to think what event could get people thinking and interested in nuclear proliferation and eliminating nuclear weapons, which was a problem then and an equally prevalent problem now, although then the Cold War was still going on, and now it isn't. And so I constantly think of what will be the Sputnik event. I had thought, and potentially there's in my optimistic moments, that global warming would be such an issue. Would be an issue that at some level would focus people on the fact that we are a global community and the fact that we can no longer there are vital issues that are affecting the planet that have to be addressed rationally and not nationally, patriotically, or politically. And I'd hope that global warming might be that kind of issue. We'll see what happens. A single crisis works better, and I've always pointed out too that no matter what people say, people are not consistent. The very same people who argue, for intelligent design in the Bush administration, say, promoted very strongly the need to understand mutation in avian flu. Because whenever, as I said, at the time, no one ever came up and said, it's been designed to kill us. Okay? Whenever there's a crisis, we turn to science. And I used to have an editor of my book, The Physics of Star Trek, said, when the aliens come down, it's the scientists that people are going to be turning to. And so it's always crises that focus people, because the solution to these problems are, empirical problems require scientific and technological solutions. So I hate to say it, but it may require a crisis more immediate than global warming to do it. But I agree with you that we apparently need crises to get us to act. And But my feeling is that talking about being an educator, and if there's an old saying that if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I'm an educator, and I always think education is the solution. So my feeling is, if we educate people, then we maybe hope that we'll act in advance of a crisis. That would be the greatest gift we could give to our children.
Hi, Dr. Krauss. My name's Jerry Cordaro. Given that the political candidates aren't experts in science, so it would depend on their staffs, what do you know about their scientific advisors, and what's your opinion on them?
Okay. Well, let me say for the first part, I've testified before Congress, and I've interacted with lots of congressional staffers, and on the whole, I have to say that they're hardworking. The people who work behind the scenes in Congress are very impressive. The young people who are there. I have to say that I know much more closely right now the scientific advice. I will add that I was on the scientific advisory committee for John Kerry, okay, which didn't meet once, okay, but it existed, okay. Now that things have changed, and I know much more closely what's happening in the Obama campaign, and I know the scientific advice. A friend of mine and a colleague and a very distinguished scientist, Harold Varmus, who was former head of the National Institutes of Health and Nobel Prize-winning doctor, is one of Obama's advisors. So I think that that campaign in particular has a good advisory staff. But science isn't just Democratic or Republican, and I'm reasonably certain that, while I don't know them as well, that McCain has some highly competent scientists on a committee. The question is, well, first of all, the question is, will the candidates listen to them? Okay. The current administration has a science advisor who's a physicist, and I know well. And the question is, he's not being listened to, and it's clearly the case. So that's really important. And for me, and people may have said, well, why does it matter if you give these questions? Some staffer will write an answer. Okay, it won't tell you much about the candidate. That's true. But what it will do is it will tell you that the campaign has been forced to think about these questions, give a response, which at some point the candidate may be held accountable for, and also will give you a sense of the quality of the advice that the candidates are getting. And so one of the things we're going to learn, I think, from the response to these questions is the quality of the advice the candidates are getting. The responses are not going to be written by the candidates. So the real answer to your question will come out in a few weeks when we see those responses, I think.
Hello, Dr. Krauss. My name's Dave Mitchell, concerned citizen, and living proof that you can be a Republican and believe in evolution at the same time. My question probably would be couched under the reduced to practice, and being a Republican, I think economics. Now, just recently I read an article that your alma mater, MIT, they just made a light directing device that amplifies the response of a photocell 40 times from what it has been in the past. Very significant in a prototype stage. It's a baby. Mm-hmm. Imagine all the steps it would take to go from that baby to millions of windows in the country or roofs. And my question to you is, how would you couch a question to the candidates on where the limits of government are, academia, and private enterprise?
Okay, since you've expressed your... that's a very good question, first of all. And I know I applaud your own efforts in science education. But let me hit you with this. So you said you're a Republican. Here's what I'd do if I were you. I'd call up John McCain, and I'd say, well, you know, it's really important if we want to solve these energy problems, to have investment. Okay, but Congress has been debating continuing the tax credits for alternative energy. Why, Mr. McCain, did you not show up for any single vote on that issue in your entire time in the Senate? Why did you not show up last week when that was being debated?